Hello, in today's video we are introducing the first story to Beowulf. We're going to read through this story together, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers to these questions and explain how I got those answers. We're doing this in case you are absent or if you missed part of the lesson because of picture day. Just go ahead and watch the parts that you didn't see in class, and if you weren't here for class, well then you need to watch the whole thing. So let's start at the beginning. Though the poetic form of Beowulf might seem foreign to you, the hero himself should seem very familiar. Now, remember, this is a translation, because this was originally written in Middle English. And remember, before it was even written in Middle English, this was an oral tale. It was an oral story. It was sung with the bards. We are not going to read this in Old English because we don't have time for that, or a good reason to do that. So this is a modern translation of Beowulf. Now, the hero himself being familiar, well, Beowulf is to the Anglo-Saxons pretty much as Captain America is to us. He embodies all these qualities of a perfect American plus super strength. And so as you see here, Beowulf has superior physical prowess. He's supremely ethical, and he risks his own life to save those who are in mortal danger or cannot protect themselves. Sound familiar? Yeah, sounds like Superman or Captain America. The setting of the first part of the epic is Harrow, a guest hall or mead hall. Remember, we discussed why these mead halls are so important. They are the hub of society. These are where everything important happens. It's where the bards sing their story, so this is where their culture lives. This is where their community lives, where they're able to communicate, and where people live on after death by being sung about in these bard songs. In addition to this community that we already discussed, and having the bards like we already discussed, they are also able to sleep in safety. And now that's not something you can necessarily take for granted in the 600s. You got to think about the sturdiness of a building. You've also got vicious wild animals. Having a place to sleep in safety is a privilege at this point in time. You'll also notice that Grendel is immediately identified as a spawn of Cain. In the Bible, Cain is the first murderer. His crime was fratricide, the murder of his own brother. Now, the Anglo-Saxons were not super duper interested in Christianity, but you'll remember that it was the Christian monks that wrote down the story because the Anglo-Saxons told this tale in a very oral culture. With those that bit of preface, you got a lot of this information that you needed to understand this by doing that lockbox. So with that background information, we're going to go ahead and start looking at the story. A powerful monster living down in the darkness growled in pain and patient as day after day the music rang loud in that hall, the harp's rejoicing call, and the poet's clear song sung of the ancient beginnings of us all, recalling the Almighty making the earth, shaping these beautiful plains marked off by oceans, then proudly setting the sun and moon to glow across the land and light it. The corners of the earth were made lovely with trees and leaves, made quick with life with each of the nations who now move on its face. And then, as now, warriors sang of their pleasure. So why is Grendel angry? Let's look. He is our powerful monster. That's Grendel. He's living down in the darkness. He growls in pain, impatient as day after day the music rang loud in that hall. He's angry because in the mead hall, they have music and community, so their joy, their music, their community. And as you're answering these on your own, I do ask that you kind of pause to write a complete sentence, but so that you don't have to see me write out a complete sentence, I'm going to kind of abbreviate my answers here. Underline or highlight the part in the text that supports your answer. Well, we already kind of started underlining it. He is that powerful monster. He's growling in pain and patient as day after day the music rang loud in that hall. He does not like their music and joy. Reread the bolded lines that describe the songs they're singing. They're singing about the Almighty making the earth, shaping the beautiful plains marked off by oceans, setting the sun and moon, the corners of the earth given life. You've got the oceans rising. What they're singing about here is the creation story, the biblical creation story. And remember, we got the Almighty reference here. So we're already kind of seeing the heavy hands of our Christian monks adding their spin to the tale. But we've also got this creation story here at the beginning, kind of setting up where we are in the tale, which is to say the beginning. So let's move on to this next section. So Hrothgar's men lived happy in his hall, till the monster stirred, that demon, that fiend, Grendel, who haunted the moors, the wild marshes, and made his home in a hell, not hell but earth. He was spawned in that slime, conceived by a pair of those monsters born of Cain, murderous creatures banished by God, punished forever for the crime of Abel's death. The Almighty drove those demons out, and their exile was bitter. Shut away from men, they split into 1,000 forms of evil. Spirits and fiends, goblins, monsters, giants, a brood forever opposing the Lord's will, and again defeated. So you'll see we got a definition over here that moor is an empty type of land, kind of like a swampish. According to the poem, where do all evil monsters come from? Well, we have our hint from up here, but we know that these monsters come from Cain. They come from murderer Cain. What do these evil monsters always want to do, but they're never successful at doing? Well, they are a brood forever opposing the Lord's will, but again and again defeated. So they are opposing God. Okay. Then, when darkness had dropped, Grendel went up to Hro, wondering what the warriors would do in that hall when their drinking was done. He found them sprawled in sleep, suspecting nothing, their dreams undisturbed. The monster's thoughts were as quick as his greed or his claws. He slipped in through the door, and there in the silence snatched up 30 men, smashed them unknowing in their beds, and ran out with their bodies, the blood dripping behind him, back to his lair, delighted with the night's slaughter. At daybreak, with the sun's first light, they saw how well he had worked, and in that gray morning broke their long feast with tears and laments for the dead. Hrothgar, their lord, sat joyless. So, why does Grendel decide to kill these men? We've got a hint for that back when we look at this first section. What's he so angry about? He's angry about their music, their joy, their community. So he decides to kill them, maybe because he's jealous. And you could add some of your own responses here. This is a why do you think answer, okay? In reading between the lines, consider your answer for number 6. What do Grendel's actions and reasons for killing show the reader about the monster? So, think about Grendel's motivation. Does Grendel seem like he has friends? I mean, being described as a monster usually isn't something that means you have a lot of friends. But also, looking at the way he is so intensely jealous, the way he hates their community, we see Grendel's maybe his loneliness, his isolation. I mean, being in quarantine, think about how you felt when you saw everyone partying and having fun and being foolish. You maybe felt kind of jealous. Now, you're not a monster, so you didn't kill anyone for that reason, but you can maybe understand where this motivation might begin. And I'm not asking you to empathize with the monster. I'm just asking you to see where this is coming from. Additionally, if you're wondering, well, it's 30 people against one monster. How did he do this? Well, one, you're going to find out how he did it later. But additionally, remember, they're drinking mead here. You remember that mead is a honeyed beer. So they have been drinking. You can put your 2 and 2 together there. In Hro, a mighty prince mourning the fate of his lost friends and companions, knowing by its track that some demon had torn his followers apart. He wept, fearing the beginning might not be the end. In that night Grendel came again, so set on murder that no crime could ever be enough, no savage assault quench his lust for evil. Then each warrior tried to escape him, searched for rest in different beds, as far from Hero as they could find, seeing as Grendel hunted when they slept. Distance was safety. The only survivors were those who fled him. Hate had triumphed. And so Grendel ruled, fought with the righteous, one against many, and won. So Hero stood empty and stayed deserted for years. Reread that bolded line. What's the meaning? He wept, fearing the beginning might not be the end. It's just getting started. It will continue. Also, do make sure you wrote your answer here, okay? Just because it's blank on mine doesn't mean it should be blank on yours. How do people achieve safety? Well, distance was safety. The only survivors were those who fled. They left their community. And think about how this was primarily an oral culture. There wasn't a whole lot of writing happening here. And so when you flee the community, you are threatening the culture itself here. So this is a really big deal what's happening here. 12 winters of grief for Hrothgar, king of the Danes. Sorrow heaped at his door by hell-forged hands. His misery leaped the seas, was told and sung in all men's ears. How Grendel's hatred began on the Danes, keeping the bloody feud alive, seeking no peace, offering no truce, accepting no settlement, no price in gold or land, and paying the living for one crime only with another. No one waited for reparation from his plundering claws. That shadow of death hunted in the darkness, stalked Hrothgar's warriors, old and young, lying in waiting, hidden in the mist, invisibly following them from the edge of the marsh, always there, unseen. For 12 winters, it's 12 years, Grendel terrorizes Hero. So apart from murder, the men are also angry because Grendel refuses to accept reparation. He refuses to let them settle the score. Grendel will accept no peace, no offering, no truce. He won't accept a truce. The reason that this matters is, remember, this is a war culture, okay? So if you realize that you're losing, you can still save your people's lives by saying, okay, look here, I will give you all this land, I'll give you these people, I'll give you these goods if you stop killing us. Grendel won't accept anything. He will not. He won't respect the rules of war. And think about how we even look at that right now in today's world. How we have this contempt for people who don't follow the rules of war, for countries that don't respect the rules of war. That's what Grendel's doing here, and that's why they're so angry at Grendel. They have a culture of war, and that comes with rules and codes. And Grendel will not accept those. He won't accept any truce. He's simply decided that he's going to kill them all. And that's not how this is supposed to work for them. They're supposed to be able to come to a truce. This last page, I'm going to go ahead and put on another video because this is about to cut me off in a few seconds. So please make sure that you watch to the end. You watch this last page in the second part of the video. Thank you very much. Please listen in here in a second.